Hi, this is Marty Wilkinson with thepeacegiverproject.com. Find us at Peacegiver Project on Instagram and Facebook. Here's my guest, Katie Hansen. As always, we'll be going back and forth talking about domestic abuse. And obviously, Katie from the standpoint of a domestic abuse survivor and me as a reformed abuser. So today, I wanted to ask Katie the question of, one of the things that's weighed heavily on my mind in abuse and, to be candid, dishonesty in relationships, and which is, there are a lot of parallels with abuse that way, and the aftermath, how it affects those people, how it affects, it's spider webs. It doesn't just affect that person right then. The abuse affects how they trust other people, the opposite gender. It affects their kids. It affects, how they respond, their conditioned responses to, a wide array of stimulus. Emotional, being just as obvious in abuse, I think, probably in this area, because I've noticed, some significant patterns in relationships of the women. Some of the women that I've dated or know that have been subjected to abuse, and it's shocking how long it lasts afterwards. Mm-hmm. So would you mind talking a bit about how it's affected you while you were abused, and afterwards, in terms of trusting the opposite gender, trusting men, and dating, things like that? How has it affected you?
So during, while in the situation, like I've said before, it completely breaks you down. You feel completely worthless. But then on the other side of it is you feel completely worthless without that person, because you, at least in my situation, right? Like I wasn't whole unless I was around him, because he made me feel that I couldn't do things on my own. I wasn't good enough to do things on my own. I wasn't any of those things. So for me, I had to be around him to feel complete. Once that separation and everything happened, and I was able to explore other options, it took me a really long time. I was a hermit for a while. I was scared of everything. I was afraid of leaving my house. I didn't know who was going to be there. I didn't know what I was going to find. And I was terrified of the outside world. I would get up, go to work, go home. Well, get up, take my kids, go to work, go pick up my kids, go home. And that was my safe place, was in my house. And I made it a safe place, changed the locks, stayed upstairs, closed all the windows, shut all the blinds, kept my kids in my bed. Like, we all slept in the same bed for a while. And so my safety was terrified to do anything. And then once I started, it probably took 6 months to a year before I was able to think, okay, like I can get out in the world. And actually, it was the fact that I had to get another job. I couldn't afford what I was doing by myself with 2 kids. It just wasn't. Right. So I had to get another job. Finding another job, I actually became a bartender, and I started meeting new people, and it was very interesting looking back on it that I didn't realize the type of people that I was attracting. And when you start to see it, I don't know how to explain it, then you attract the people that you're used to. And even though you were just in that situation, that's still what you're attracting. Mm-hmm. So I found someone I dated, and they were not a very nice person, but I thought it was normal.
Right.
So for me, that was a normal thing. And then I got very, I don't even remember what happened with it, other than I felt again. That person left me, and he was right. My ex-husband was right. Everything he ever said, nobody's ever going to love me again. Nobody's ever going to care about me. So then I started to believe it was me that was the problem. Like, this person broke me down to make me feel absolutely worthless. So then I went on a different aspect, and I was trying to find somebody to protect me. So instead of really needing somebody to care about me, I just wanted protection. So So, you go for the bigger men so that they can protect you and keep you safe. So when your ex-husband gets out of jail, you're going to be fine. And that didn't work out so well either. Same mindset. You did something wrong and it all came back down on me. So it took a lot of years. I went through that with a lot of people, and I dated some really good men that, because of my mental state, it wasn't okay. I was worthless. Even if you just raised your voice at me, I snapped, and that was it. I'm not worth it anymore. And if I can break it off before you can't hurt me. So I broke off with a lot of people because I didn't want to get hurt anymore. So you can say something to me, and even though you're the greatest person in the world, I'm going to pick every single thing that I can out of you that's bad or negative, and then just explode and walk away because I'm not worth it to you. So I went through that for a really long time. I dated a few men, and finally, like I said, this last relationship that I was in 2.5 years ago was the last one for me, where I was like, okay, it really is. I know there's nothing wrong with me as a person. I know I'm a good person. I know I'm worth more, but I knew I hadn't found myself. So I took a very long journey, still trying to figure out who I am and what I deserve, because I know what I was doing is not what I deserved. So
that makes sense. I actually someone asked me if I attracted the same type of person, and I don't. And I did a solo post. I did a post on it the other day. As I think about it more, I did for a minute though, and part of it was, and I realized until recently there is one thing that's critical to me, but I'll get there in a second. I did. I got being so used to manipulated and controlled, that by someone who was codependent, that they were, and I said, there are a couple types of codependents. They're the kind that are super sweet and they guilt you, and then there's the other kind that want to stab you. And which sounds like it's more, but they're angry and they yell, and at any rate, it's different tactics. But I did that. I'd gotten so used to being with yellers, I didn't want to be with a yeller. So I was someone that was nice, but they would use their niceness as a codependent. I was like, oh shiz, this is bad. And they're like, and then when I made a mistake, well, what's wrong? Did I not love you enough? Was I not good enough? I'm like, whoa, what the hell's going on?
Yeah.
That doesn't even make sense. And as an alcoholic, that's dangerous. That's really dangerous for an alcoholic to be with someone that's like that, because then it's a temptation for an alcoholic to manipulate that person. You're right, it is your fault. Yeah. It's all your fault. No.
Because then you don't feel bad about it.
Yeah, but it's dangerous because I can't live my life that way, and I don't want to be with someone that thinks everything is their fault, because it's my fault a lot, at least 50% of the time, and there are probably a couple of women out there that would say it's a hell of a lot more than that. And they're probably right. That's probably true. But I did that. It went from angry, after I've been married twice. After my first marriage, there wasn't physical abuse, but certainly emotional and yelling. I'm not a yeller, but I was yelled at a lot. And second one, that's where the physical abuse came in, and there was certainly yelling. And then, at least I broke the yelling part. And then I didn't feel safe. I much maybe like you. I thought, if I break it off sooner, you can't hurt me. And I started listening to. I started reading and listening to Brene Brown a lot. I've listened to anything she's written or produced. I've read or listened to at least 5 times. Because, and she talks about vulnerability a lot. Our capacity to connect and to love is directly proportionate to the amount of vulnerability we're willing to put out there. Well, vulnerability also means, it means that we're willing to connect on a very deep level. That also means we can get hurt severely. And for someone that's been abused, they're very vulnerability averse. Mm-hmm. And so I ran from that, and I've dated women like that. That spooks me, because today I'm pretty good at vulnerability. And not everybody is, and if they're not, it's hard, because I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but I'm also not here to fix anybody. I'm not here to change anybody. Yeah. But there's one thing that I've noticed that still lingers with me, and that I just realized in the last week, and that is apologies. I don't know that I've ever dated a single woman that was willing to freely apologize, ever. At first and early on it was ego, and I talked about this to my eldest son. He said, I haven't really found that at all. I'm like, well, you're 20, so the gals life hasn't beat them up yet.
Yeah.
And that's good. I would dare say that's a beautiful thing. Mm-hmm. That's a good thing. I would dare say that with a lot of women, men too, it becomes, some of it is ego, but another is everything's been made to feel like it's your fault. Mm-hmm. So you stop apologizing, or the person says, "Oh, I'm sorry." It's like, but you cheated on me. It's not like a "I'm sorry" kind of thing. It's more of a we need to have an actual conversation about this. Or if it's I'm sorry that you're upset. I'm like, but you did something that was really hurtful. Can you be sorry for that? Mm-hmm. And the reason why they're not, and I've put a lot of thought into that. I'm like, why do I do that? And why would I do that? And it comes back to vulnerability. Because if I say that I'm sorry, and I've dealt with this in recovery, and I've dealt with this in relationships, to where if I hold that back, if I hold that back, then I'm not vulnerable. Mm-hmm. But if I say I'm sorry, they can reject it. And then I'm a rejected person.
See, and that's funny, because I'm the other side of that. I said I'm sorry way too much.
Right.
Way too much. So I found in my past relationships, I would apologize for everything. Absolutely everything.
Uh-huh.
And then they would be like, why are you sorry? Well, it's because I did that. Well, you didn't do anything wrong. So I was apologizing when it wasn't even necessary. But
I've heard that too.
Yeah.
Just not with the women I've dated, but I've heard that with, and even with some that I know or have dated, they stopped apologizing because they did that same thing. Mm-hmm. And their marriage of, 15, 20 years, everything was their fault, and they were like, why am I apologizing? Finally they realized, why the hell am I apologizing? I didn't do anything wrong. Yeah.
It takes a while to realize it. And then you realize that you say it so much that it's not sincere anymore. Mm. Right? Like, because just every little thing, I'm sorry. So then people don't they don't take it as authentic, or as that you mean it as much, because you're saying it so much, when really, genuinely, like, I was sorry. But because I was saying it so many times, people weren't taking it seriously anymore. But that was something that was instilled with me. I had to apologize for the things that I was doing wrong, even though I wasn't doing wrong.
Did you ever find yourself making things up to apologize for, to diffuse a situation?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I heard that the other day for the first time. The first time I'd ever heard of it in my life. Mm-hmm. And I wonder how common it is.
It's probably really common, because it's easier to apologize than it is to get hurt. So even if this person is making up something in their head, right? They're yelling at me because I haven't done any, like, in their mind, I have done something wrong. Right? I'm in trouble because I've done something wrong. I have no idea what
like
it is.
a child.
Yeah. But if I can apologize, you're right. I'm sorry I didn't fold the laundry correctly. Now I'm apologizing for something I really didn't do, but I've now made it up because it's given you something that I have done wrong. So now you feel better that I have apologized for something you've made up in your head.
So you default to submissive to diffuse the situation.
Yeah, because then I don't get hurt. It stops it.
Basic fight or flight.
So I can stand here and take it and know what's going to come. Or I can simply...
It's interesting. And that's one of those things, the reason why I asked that, because the relationship part came up, and this has everything to do with abuse. Then you meet someone who is actually sincere and healthy-ish.
Ish.
And they didn't sign up for any of that. And when they offer an apology, they mean it. And that's what I found. I'm like, well, the apology was withheld. I'm like, wait, why is it, or did my feelings not matter to you? And they may have. I don't know. I will never know, because, you know, they didn't say so and they didn't apologize. So I'll never know. And that hurts because, you know, I love that person. And that person meant the world to me. And then suddenly my feelings are vapor. They mean nothing to that person. At least that's what's processing through my head, because it's not even worth saying, you know, I'm really sorry that I did that. I'll do better. Anything. It's just... And then walk out of the room and it's like, shit, really? That's what you got from me. Like, you really hurt me, and you know you hurt me. And then that sends me back to, you know, the place as a 14-year-old kid. It's like, well, shit, am I not worth it? Isn't that love? And it's weird to have, you know, a 43-year-old man say, well, geez, you know, take me right back to that place. I'm like, shit, am I not worth loving? And then I remind myself, yeah, I am. And there was a book that I've read, The 4 Agreements, that opened my eyes a ton to abuse and the mechanics of abuse, and where, you know, where I derive my worth from. And it was interesting. That book, actually, after I read that book, the very next week is when I filed for divorce. That's when I left. When I realized how unhealthy everything was objectively. And since then, it's been, you know, I haven't been a dead ringer, but I am a lot more objective today, and I know that everybody's got their stuff, even the person that wouldn't apologize, or the people, because like I said, I have yet to meet the person, the woman that, and I'm not necessarily blaming her. Before, I would have leveled judgment, like, what the hell is wrong with you? And today I'm like, you know, I don't know what the story is behind that. A, because I did that, but B, because all the stories that I heard, I'm like, well, geez, you know, if I'd gone through that, I might respond the same way. And it's probably more of a defense mechanism. She probably did care about my feelings. And was just too afraid because she hadn't worked through her stuff. It was a conditioned response based on things that somebody else did, and that's sad. It's too bad. And it makes me wonder how many, you know, it's just the aftermath of that abuse. And that's part of the, you know, what I want to convey is when we hurt people, even if it's not physical, that emotional abuse, it leaves a significant mark. And a lot of times, one of the saddest parts to me is, you know, after I really sat with it, and it gets heavy for me, when I really dive down the rabbit hole of the consequences of my actions, there's probably really some amazing person out there that's having to deal with my garbage. some amazing dude out there that is dealing with my stuff, and he may not have the patience to deal with it. It may have been beautiful. It wasn't with me, but it might have been with somebody else. And I think how many times could it have been really amazing with me, but some jackass caused trauma that in a conditioned response that she couldn't deal with. It's interesting. At any rate, but there's a solution. There's a solution to that, and at the end of every road that I found when it comes to abuse, empathy has been the solution. It always has been for me. When I consider, that's why even with, the gal whose, feelings I thought at the time, like, man, my feelings, I love this person more than anything, and my feelings mean nothing, clearly. And that wasn't true either, but at the time I couldn't empathize because I didn't take into account the entire story or have the patience to ask why. What's, at any rate, it's interesting, but fortunately, no, I don't attract the same type of person anymore. I don't. But, part of that is right now, it hasn't been 2.5 years. It's been more like, a month or two. But some, I do think it's healthy, especially after someone has ended an abusive relationship or hasn't gotten there. Once you realize that you're part of the problem, to just take a time out and just say, you know what, I need to get myself right before I pass this garbage on to anybody else or hurt anybody else. Because, I want to actually have something beautiful. I don't want abuse. I want sane. I want healthy. I want loving.
Yeah.
And, who wouldn't? Well, that's a silly question because there are plenty of people out there that don't want that. At any rate, our time is far spent. Thank you for joining us tonight. I hope you're having a terrific day. Again, if you find value in this, please do like and share. You can find us at peacegiverproject.com or at Peacegiver Project on Instagram and Facebook. Have a terrific day.